Hey ladies, my name is Jenny Chaffetz and I am the host of Sideline Sisters. Are you a busy mom, powerhouse professional, or high-achieving go-getter? This show is for no BS women who want to be inspired to get off the sidelines of their lives. Ever feel like you're playing small or safe or just on autopilot? My guests are relatable women who've gone on a journey, overcome challenges, and lived to share the lessons that we want to hear. These conversations will be funny, sad, scary, wise, encouraging, and most of all, real. So whether you're driving, doing chores, exercising, walking the dog, or just laying on the couch, settle in and enjoy. I want to invite you to take back your power, reignite your passions, and step off the sidelines. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Sideline Sisters. I am your host, Jenny Chaffetz, and I am so grateful that you found your way here to this show. Whether you're listening on a podcast app or on YouTube, I thank you for tuning in, and I would be even more honored if you would be so kind as to give this show a 5-star rating and review. Those both help other listeners find this show and help the whole thing grow, which is really the point. The women that I interview on this show have amazing stories of resilience, strength, confidence, growth, dedication to their cause, and overall empowerment. And so my job here is to promote my guests and spread their messages far and wide. So please help me do that by telling your friends about this show, sharing the specific episodes that you have found most helpful, most encouraging, and let's just make Sideline Sisters the go-to show for midlife support. Let's do that. And today's guest is going to help us with insight into comedy and how we can bring humor into our lives and share it with others. Lynn Harris is a culture-shifting producer, award-winning journalist, and author and co-author of 6 books whose comedy and campaigns for social justice and gender equity have changed laws and conversations from Capitol Hill to NASCAR. She is founder and CEO of Gold Comedy, the comedy school, professional network, and content studio where women and non-binary folks grow their comedy careers, build powerful communities, and make funny stuff. Harris co-created Breakup Girl, which was acquired by Oxygen, one of the first multi-platform internet success stories, and served as the first VP of Communications at global human rights group Breakthrough, where her blend of humor and advocacy powered some of the team's most effective U.S. campaigns. She has also worked as a Tonya Harding lookalike, which is a long story. And unfortunately, I did not get that story in this conversation, so perhaps you will want to reach out to her on your own to find out what that's all about. Lynn and I have an engaging, funny, of course, conversation about why comedy is such an important force in moving big issues forward. She also shares valuable tips on how to incorporate comedy into day-to-day life and how to find your inner comic, even if you aren't pursuing a professional career, but just how to appreciate daily humor. Because honestly, don't we all need a few more laughs to balance out all the crap that we have to deal with? Am I right? Now, before I get into the conversation with Lynn, I want to make sure you know where to go for breath work. And that is to me, Gentle Coaching. Simply check the show notes and you will see a link to the Sideline Sisters Facebook group, which is where I post free breathwork sessions. And you will also see a link to a specific breathwork session that you can access. It's quick and intended to help you connect with your body. This is something we busy women don't typically do, and we don't typically make time to do. But in just 15 minutes, you can experience the power and shift that breathwork offers. And if you are a fan and want to get more of it, just send me an email, jenny@gentlecoaching.com, and I can let you know how we can do more of it together. Breathwork has been an incredibly useful tool for me. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me just tell you. What you do is breathe purposefully using specific patterns that the facilitator will guide, and you focus on an intention. Maybe it's to feel more joyful, more calm. Maybe you're working through grief. An intention can be anything, really. And by focusing on your breath and keeping the intention in mind, your body does this internal housekeeping. It moves stuck energy the same way a feather duster moves dust that has collected on a shelf, the same way a vacuum moves lint that has collected in corners. And when we move stuck energy, we're able to feel and process emotions that we have ignored or suppressed in some way, and then make space inside for the intention that we desire. When we do that housekeeping, we make space for peace, joy, abundance, gratitude, love, all of it. So if this sounds like something that interests you, click on the link in the show notes and give it a try. Now let's get into the conversation with Lynn. I am particularly excited for this conversation today because while I am incredibly late to the party, I am finally in the middle of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So it just seems really apropos that I am here today now with Lynn Harris to talk about comedy. So Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Let's do it. Let's do it. And I have if I may, jump right in with some unsolicited TV recommendations.
Yes, please.
For your up next cue when you finish Mrs. Maisel and when you buy all the clothes. Then
nobody has the budget for that.
No, I am. Then your next watch, if you're still interested in the theme, should be Hat. Because for a couple of reasons, in my opinion, love Mrs. Maisel, love the show, etc. It's not necessarily it's illuminating about fashion and many other things. It's not necessarily illuminating, nor does it set out to be really, and this is fine, about like the reality of women in comedy. Like it's very, very much sort of a made up thing, what she does, and that's fine, totally fine, no shade. But if it leaves you curious about like to watch a show that is about women in comedy and really in just like the current now, especially because the theme, like the engine of the story, no spoilers, is about a quote unquote older woman who's been around comedy for a long time. How does she maintain her career and stay relevant? And so it's about women of a certain age. And then the setup is that they bring her a younger writer to as a partner, sort of a Gen Z writer. Right. And so, what's that about? How does that work? How does their relationship evolve? But it's all in the context of, I mean, of course it wouldn't work without the depth of their personal relationship and how it evolves and changes and, for better and for worse. But it's in the context of the challenges and obstacles in the comedy business for women. And so without being like messagey, it shows not tells, but like that's the show that will illuminate for you like that piece that Mrs. Maisel doesn't try to do,
Right. Yeah. So, great. I will check it out and I'll link it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, it's great. Like, it's a wild romp through ageism.
Nice. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting to me. I mean, just on that show, to, like you said, non-comedy aspects of how the fact that she's in her mid-20s and talking about marriage and motherhood and these life things that at her age, as it's portrayed on the show, I was not in that world yet. I was not looking to have 3 under 30 and go to my little exercise class with my best friend and then, come back to my parents' house and hang out with them every afternoon and live in this very insulated world like she does, which maybe she's trying to get out of. And maybe that's part of her journey. But it's just funny that I'm finally getting to that show just as I'm talking to you in this context. So
and it's super fun.
Oh God, it's super fun. I mean, the clothes are insane. It's like watching, 1950s Sex and the City. It's ridiculous.
I know. Not to be not to bring down the party, but I recently cleaned out all of my late mom's clothes. And she had those things.
Wow.
And I had to give them away with like a very careful note. I gave them away on like Facebook Marketplace. And I was like, please know that these clothes will fit no one.
Right.
Like, I mean,
I'm right there with you. I mean, my mother passed when I was 18. So
mm,
I went through her closet when I was still didn't have, the childbearing hips yet,
right.
and she had stuff in her closet from her mother, and I
Yep.
remember seeing my grandmother in photos with these beautiful gowns and little like applique sweaters with them.
Yep.
And I went to put some of these on as an 18, 19-year-old girl, and it was like, I don't know if they'd fit my Cabbage Patch Kid.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's not even like, oh, skinny biatch. It's not that. It's not, they're
No,
not like the
I
same as us, but skinnier. They're just like
it's a
not
different
the same species of
it's like
it's
taking my
unbelievable.
my camera when I have a photo and like dragging from the corner, and the whole
Yeah,
thing.
the whole thing.
I was just like, how does a human wear this sweater?
Yeah.
How is it that
Yeah.
I'm looking at a picture of a woman who was in her 50s or 60s at the time wearing this sweater? I think it would fit a toddler. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I hope people do enjoy your mother's clothes, and maybe, I don't know,
Someone out there is, I don't know.
find someone
Yeah.
who has a stunted stature,
Something.
can
I gave
anyway,
them to a very experienced vintage dealer and said, just,
nice.
do what you must. Cause yeah. So I hope someone's enjoying them. They were beautiful.
Yeah, maybe there's a 12-year-old girl who loves them. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
In a cartoon.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Who's been drawn, as a stick figure. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so love that you are in the comedy world, because again, I mean, as much as Mrs. Maisel is not about the industry, it does give me a shred of
Oh yeah,
perspective
for
on
sure.
the balls that it takes to get up on stage and
Yep.
attempt to be funny. I mean, I think I'm a fairly humorous person. Again, like if my kids were listening to this, they would strongly disagree. Uh,
They're not your audience. It's
right,
fine.
exactly. But I don't know. I feel like I can make my friends laugh here and there. So if that's any indication of my level of
Yeah.
humor, then great. But yeah, I can't fathom what the courage and confidence and the knowing that this is going to make people laugh. So where did it even begin for you getting into the world of professional comedy?
I'm happy to tell that, but before I forget, I also, one of the things that our, mentors, advisors, instructors say all the time, and I echo, is that, not that comedy isn't hard and not that you don't have to work on it and learn the mechanics and practice and practice and practice, but kind of a go-to idea is, it's not about making people laugh. It's about saying things that you think are funny.
Mm,
Like, if it cracks you up and you can
yeah.
sell it that way, like, that's where you start. It's not about the result. I mean, of course you need to have that result. Of course, it's not just like your own like monologue in your closet, but
Right. If you want people to pay you for it, yeah.
right. But like, you can't sell it unless you think it's funny. So that's where you need to start,
Yeah.
And so that's where, mostly people, that's what we encourage, at Gold Comedy is to just sort of not take yourself out of it just because if you position the goal as I must make people laugh,
Mhm.
that makes it very hard to get started. Whereas
Right, right.
if you position the goal as what cracks me up, then you are less likely to be staring at a blank page.
And honestly, the same thing can be said for coaching, and
Mm-hmm.
in the spiritual world, is it's not focusing on you, the client's result or transformation reaction. It's me professing what I know to be true and what I believe. So there's a little bit of similarity. I can't focus
Yeah.
on, are you going to react to this? Are you going to have some big breakthrough after
Right.
I speak on this topic? I don't know. I did,
Right.
so that's up to you now.
Very good comp. Totally. But yeah, how did I get into it? Well, I was fortunate enough to kind of be steeped in comedy growing up, with, around the dinner table with my parents. Again, I'm Gen X, so around the table, and my parents had good taste in comedy. So, and came from like generally funny, but very different style backgrounds. Comedy had currency in our house. And so,
Mhm.
Laugh-In, MASH, the Jeffersons, the Muppet Show,
Yeah,
Carol Burnett, Even those goofy variety shows were vaudeville, like the Captain and Tennille, the Osmond Family, even like the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. They all had that like bump kind of comedy, which is like where it all began. And even at the time, I didn't notice that. I wasn't like, oh, well, I like those feet. Oh, and obviously I love Lucy. Obviously Lucille Ball. And also the Brady Bunch holds up. It's like much funnier than we remember because it's really just old school shtick. But in any case, I never thought about, it did not occur to me. I wasn't like, Lucille Ball is a funny female comic. Yeah. I didn't think about it. Carol Burnett is a funny female comic. They were just all funny. And I'm like, that is the magical bubble that I would like to get us back to, where I'm skipping ahead now, but wouldn't it be nice, this is kind of my way to talk about my mission, where we could live in a world where it's like that. In other words, and by the way, not to erase the obstacles that they faced at the time where they were working twice as hard to get paid half as much, of course. But now it's like, I still have people say to me, oh, so you're a comedian. I'm sorry, comedian. And I'm like, can you not?
God.
Like, did you just call your doctor a doctorate? Like, no. And
that's funny.
Right. But I think it's someone else's joke that we said in conversation, and I can't remember who. So it's not my joke. I hope to credit them someday. But in any case, she also said, do you call your lawyer a lawyerette? So I would like to live in a world where no one calls us female comics. No one calls us women comics, where we're just comics. And
sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like that tide is turning, because if you notice, in Hollywood, actor is becoming the normal.
I'm working on that one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to speak that into reality. Like I always say actor, I never say actress.
And I feel like they do. Like you'll see Reese Witherspoon get an award and it's like, as an actor in today's world, blah, blah, blah. So they refer to themselves that way. And I feel like maybe that's the point is it's gotta be spoken.
That's
from
a bellwether. Yep. That's a bellwether for sure. But in any case, so I didn't have like a thing about it. I was just like, okay, I love this and I want to do this. And I didn't even have like a big dream or a specific goal. I was never like, that's going to be me on SNL. Like I was either not that ambitious, or it was just kind of obvious to me that in some way I would be doing some funny things. And the same as a writer, I was also a journalist for many years and very successful and won awards and made a lot of impact. But the two things were very much combined. So anyway, I just kind of, as it turns out, mostly got the funny roles in the musicals, like the Ado Annie, not the romantic lead, but the funny friend.
Right.
I, in college, I was in an a cappella group, and I wasn't the only one, but I masterminded all of the sketches we did between songs. Like it was just natural. And then after college, I moved to Boston, which is where I'm back to Boston, which is where I'm from. And
me too.
I was just like, no way.
How did we don't cover that?
Let's do it. I don't know. Let's do it real quick. Nobody will mind.
I grew up south of Boston in Sharon.
Oh, sure. I'm from, I was born in Boston, but I grew up in Lexington. So nice.
Sure. Yeah. I lived in Brookline when I first got married and then we made our way up to New Hampshire, but
Yep. Okay.
My daughter's going to college in Boston. So,
that's great. Mine is in Massachusetts, but yeah. Cool. All right. Fun. So Boston strong. So I just, I was just like, well, I guess I'm going to take a stand-up class. Like it wasn't a big, I was just like, this will be next. And I took a perfectly good stand-up class and just started doing it. And, stayed with it for about 10 years, morphed a little bit more into storytelling, moved to New York somewhere in the middle. And then, as a journalist and a creator, my through line was always, not everything I did was about social change for sure. But I got my start writing for a sewing newsletter, like what, you got to do all the jobs. But the through line for the whole thing was, I love social change and I love comedy. How can I do them at the same time? And I'm not the first person to think of that. There are many, academics and experts who really dig into why comedy is a force in that way. And I have my own thoughts, but I always thought like, well, yeah, let me just do both. So I was able to go through several different types of jobs and several different types of projects where I could combine both of them. And then I got where it finally got to was, and I can go back and give you detail, but where it finally got to was, what if I could, now that I'm too tired to stay up after 10, what if I could bring it all together by, especially as a feminist, and someone who really believes in culture change, as necessary for social change. What if I could combine them by creating a company that helps women, especially women and others, anyone outside the comedy norm, which is basically straight cis white dude. Again, we love them.
Mm-hmm.
They should succeed too. Comedy is hard for everyone. And some of my best friends are very funny straight cis white dudes. But what if we could help? What if we could make it easier for the people for whom it's hardest? And why do we care? Because there are many other ways to drive social change, but why do we care? Because comedy is a job, and because women are people, just like anywhere else. And also, as we just discussed, it's a potent social force. So it's not just about the content that people are creating, but it's literally just what faces they see and voices they hear. Because when you're doing comedy, you have authority, and whether you're leading the writer's room, or whether you're picking the sketches for the show, or whether you're literally the one on stage with the mic making everyone listen, you have authority, you have power. And so, when you make people laugh, you make people listen. So what if we sort of flood the zone with enough women and others doing comedy, making comedy, whatever it is they're making, so that it becomes just less interesting that you're a woman doing comedy, and more powerful, because there are just so many of us that we are able to break down the barriers just by showing up and help change the face of comedy, which, if I'm not getting too grandiose, can help change the face of power.
Yeah. I mean, even again, like here was something from Mrs. Maisel, and not to give the spoiler alert here if you haven't seen it, sorry, but when they show the in Sophie Lennon's house, they show her room that ends up being like the writer's room, like ding ding ding, she doesn't write her own jokes.
Right.
It's a group of middle-aged white men sitting around a table smoking and drinking and not knowing what time it is. But then flash forward, I'll try to do the math, 40 to 50 years, and you've got Liz Lemon leading the table. So it is incredible how much the old view of comedy versus there is a woman in the room now.
Yeah. Have you seen the shows? There's a really funny show that needed more seasons, called Reboot, with Rachel Bloom, who we love, and from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And it's about, they reboot a show, and they bring in a writer's room, and it's this hilarious mix of, like, frankly hilarious old white dudes who are like just vaudeville style, old fashioned, like Friars Club core jokes, and then to sort of resolve their staffing differences, they also bring in like a bunch of Gen Z writers, who are very, very funny, but also very earnest and very kind of like forward looking. And the 12 of them just sit around the table like as if they're speaking a different language. And
I was just gonna say
funny.
that had to have been like English and Greek, like
it's so funny. And so
we'll add that to the list.
That's another one. Yeah, Reboot. Okay. It really needed a second season. It's a brilliant show. Yeah, it's really brilliant.
Hey ladies, I'm interrupting the show to tell you about Gentle Coaching. Gentle Coaching is my business. It is where I offer life coaching and breathwork services to midlife women and their young adult daughters. And there are a few different ways that you can stay in touch with me so you know everything that's going on. The first is Instagram at Gentle Coaching. The second is Facebook at Gentle Coaching. The third is on my website, gentlecoaching.com, and those are all gentle with a J, by the way. And the fourth is my email newsletter. Are you on the list? You can grab the links to all of those things in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. Now, you brought up a couple of times the concept of social change, social justice. Where did that originate? Again, was that like around the dinner table with your family? Like, let's talk about the issues that matter to us. Was that in college? Like, where did you become this crusader for issues?
Everywhere. I mean, I guess I was fortunate enough that I was raised by a feminist mom. So being a feminist was thanks to her, not a rebellion. My parents were like neither of them was from Massachusetts, but like they were both kind of, Massachusetts blue state liberals. It was not a struggle. Again, like the comedy, it was just the water that I swam in. And they used to say, you went to an anti-war march in your stroller, and and that was the Vietnam War, just to be clear.
Got it.
Yeah. And Korean, she looks amazing. And yeah, they weren't like huge activists, but they weren't not, and it was just, my mother also came from a long line of Jewish socialists, in the old country, who were, just very focused on that flavor of social justice. There was, of course, Holocaust in the background, which in some ways predisposes you to thinking about those matters moving forward, all that stuff. And then by the time I went to high school in the 80s, there was a lot of stuff to be angry about in the 80s. So I was drawn to joining the Boston chapter of the National Organization for Women, and wound up being their vice president for public relations and doing a lot of work. It's really how I learned about organizing, advocacy, PR, all that stuff for change. And then again, but my style was always comedy. So it was always interesting to me to see how can we combine the advocacy techniques that I know with the comedy that I love. Because especially, this is not the only reason, but especially because sometimes, not always, the comedy piece can sugarcoat, can make, like, no one really wants to talk about abortion, but if you get some good jokes in there that are appropriate, that are not making fun of the people who are harmed, but making fun of the culture around it, making fun of the inconsistencies and hypocrisies and blah blah blah, then you can get people to loosen up and talk about it a little bit more, for example.
Yeah, because it is fascinating. It's come up for me so much in my personal growth journey, as well as in therapy and my discussions with other people in that arena, that comedy, specifically sarcasm, is a major defense mechanism and protective identity that allows people to avoid being
that's true too.
authentic or being vulnerable. And so that it's kind of a fuzzy line or a tightrope to walk of, I want to be funny on this issue or in this situation, but I also don't want to minimize my feelings or anyone else's.
Yeah, I guess it sort of depends. That's true too. That both are true at the same time, and I guess it sort of depends on, sort of where you are in your process and what your goals are. Because when we actually have a whole class at Gold Comedy, for example, called Comedy About Trauma, which we're very careful to say. First of all, your instructor is not a therapist.
Right, sure.
We're also and sort of certain conditions must be met before you can even kind of show up for that project. Oh, wow. Meaning you have to be like ready to talk about it and ready to kind of like mess around with the topic. It can't still be your like, tear-stained journal. Another is, being super careful, and this is true of a lot of types of comedy, being super careful of, as we said with abortion, being super careful about who and what you're making fun of. But what I've heard from cognitive therapists, and again, it's not a substitute for cognitive therapy, but they say that there are elements of writing jokes about hard stuff that have their analog in cognitive therapy, and that is, or really any kind of therapy, where if you're able to kind of hold here, I'm doing it with a lipstick for those not watching. If you're able to kind of hold the thing far enough away from you that you could kind of flip it over and look at different aspects of it and say, well, what about this is funny? Okay, not that part, but like, okay, but that's funny. Like the way my mom reacted was funny, or the stupid thing I did that was actually hilarious to try to avoid the other thing that was funny.
Yeah.
And so when you're able to do that, and I'm giving you this like visual.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to say, I love the visual that you're showing. So for anyone not watching, it's like hold your arm out straight. Yeah. And imagine twiddling something around.
Yeah. And then when you're holding it away from you, that means you have distance from it. You have enough distance from it to observe it. And it's something you have, but it's not running you. Those are sort of the conditions under which engaging in writing and performing comedy about whether it's trauma or just things that aren't funny at all. That's the sort of framework for it to be very powerful.
And again, see here, I mean, there's just so much depth to Mrs. Maisel. I mean, the fact that she can get up and poke fun at her divorce, or
Right.
the fact that she's on the road and her kids are at home and, doesn't see them. And there's a humor there that if you were to extract the humor, then it's very sensitive. It's like, well, shit, divorce, like that's big.
Yeah.
Or traveling away from your young children, that's big, but it's also really funny the way she talks about it. So
yeah. And it's super
why
relatable,
not?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the weird paradox is that the more specific you are about your own story, the more relatable it is to others. I don't know why. It's just that somehow the more specific you are, the more able you're kind of, even just from your own perspective, to get at the thing that is primal about whatever you're talking about, whether it's like fear of abandonment or, whatever, like, I don't want to be lonely.
Well,
Like,
I mean, divorce is big and vague, but when she
sure.
talks about her husband cheating on her with Penny the secretary, like that's funny and that's specific,
right.
and it's also funny the way she tells it.
And as an audience member, even if you aren't married or not worried about divorce or whatever, you can still relate to the primal thing of, betrayal, aging. I don't know, there's still those themes that are primal and relatable no matter what. But you got to get the specifics in order for them to attach themselves to other people.
That's so interesting. So what if someone's listening and they're like, great, Lynn, this all sounds awesome. There is nothing about me that's funny. I've never been told I'm funny. I don't know how to make a joke. I don't know how to make people laugh. People think I'm boring. Like, great. So how do I live a full, complete life when I'm not funny?
Well, first of all, I mean, it is true let's just get this out of the way. Let's just stipulate that it's true that like some of this stuff just may come more naturally to others, but that doesn't mean anything about anything, really. First of all, there's no one way to be funny. There's just no one way to be funny. Or, people might say like, oh, I'd love to do comedy, but I'm too shy. Do you know how shy comedians are? Like they're like, why do you think they're on stage? So they don't have to talk to people, like it's, so like, there's no one right way to be. There's no one way to be funny. There's no one rule. There's no one role for you in comedy. If you're kind of, it sounds like maybe you're talking about someone who somehow feels drawn to it because they're asking the question in the first place. But
or maybe they feel intimidated by this conversation and they're like, well, great. Like, I don't have anything to offer. I'm not funny.
Right. Again, there's no one way to be funny. There's no one style or one set of, there's no one persona that's funny. There's no one topic that's funny. And also there's no one genre that someone has to see themselves doing. Like maybe the person you're talking about has just binged all of and there are a lot more women than there used to be on Netflix. And I think and Hulu now has comedy, and thought like, I could never do that. Do you know how long they've worked at that? Like, so like, you can like admire them, but like, and aspire, but like, that's not going to happen overnight. It's 10 years to be an overnight success. So like, don't directly compare. You can enjoy, but not compare. And the thing I'd say is that a lot of people come to Gold Comedy, my company, because it actually is, and if you can find it somewhere else, that's great too, but because it actually is a quote, and I'm doing air quotes, safe space, although it is safe, to like, first of all, not show up in a comedy class where you're the only 45-year-old woman with a bunch of 22-year-old white dudes, which automatically is more comfortable. They may be very nice white dudes, but like this, Second of all, we encourage you to write jokes, and we're not the only ones, but we encourage you to write jokes that only you could tell. And we do that by starting with helping you mine your life for things that aren't jokes yet, but could be funny. Like maybe you just haven't noticed the water that you're swimming in. Like I remember someone saying like, growing up with 6 siblings, we had a house full of pets, and I was the only one who did not like animals. Now, that's not a joke, but like that to me is hilarious. So that to me is like, okay, that's a conversation. Well, what was that like? Tell us more. What did you do with, but did the cats and dogs always therefore sleep on your bed? Did you, how many lint brushes did you have? Like, blah, 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 and so things that you don't know are funny are just because they're not jokes yet, And then the other thing is that we have a lot of people come to us with ideas for TV shows, films, podcasts, unscripted shows, web series that entail comedy, but are not like necessarily like sitcoms. So we have we have a pitching class where people learn to develop those ideas into an industry standard pitch. So they don't always start out as comedies or the genre. You might describe it as a dramedy, or a drama, but dramas have like This Is Us was a drama, but it was also very full of jokes, right?
Right, sure.
So you wouldn't even call it a dramedy, it's a drama.
For sure, yeah.
Right, but full of jokes, very funny. So you don't have to, like, not everything has to be a laugh a minute either.
Yeah.
It's just, what's the story that's on your heart to tell, and what are you not noticing is not a joke yet, but material. And so one thing I kind of came up with on the fly the other day that I have to really make a thing of is, if people are curious, they could, like gratitude journals. We all know about gratitude journals.
It comes up a lot on this show. Yeah.
Yes. My idea was, well, I'm not sure what to call it yet, because it could, like, maybe it's a "this could be funny" journal. And it's not, comedians have notebooks, and for sure, but this could be like the beginner version of that. Comedians write everything down when they're on the subway, when they're, whatever, when they're on their mall walk, whatever it is, they, anything that occurs to them, they write it down, whether it's a notebook, a notes app on their phone, voice memo, whatever it is.
Sure.
And that's a must. But like, if you're not a comic yet, but you're like, well, what could be funny about me? This is a new thing for me, recommend keeping a "that could be funny" journal, and where you just write down stuff that, again, isn't funny yet, but it's just in your life and you didn't notice. Like, this is not that original, but there was just a cartoon in the New Yorker of like a giant wall chart, and this person, probably a woman, trying to cook, and it was a giant wall chart of all the different foods and likes and dislikes that the family. It was huge.
That's
and
hilarious.
So, like, this is your bummer every night, right? But it's also kind of funny. Like, so every night you're like, fork. Now I have to cook dinner for 11 different preferences, and relatable.
Right.
But, like,
27 allergies and yeah.
Right. Not a joke yet, but like noticing that you're noticing that this stuff is going on in your life, that could be material. And so you don't have to worry about, like, is it funny yet, or am I funny yet? It's just, I would start with mining your life for material, and you never know what it could turn into. It could even just be a podcast where you're like funny off the cuff, like, there's no one goal.
And I thought you were going somewhere else with the keep a journal. I thought you were going to say, instead of gratitude, how about like the anti-gratitude of like, these are the shitty things that happened today.
Sure. If that speaks to you, then great. Like, right. Absolutely. Like the bullshit journal,
Right. Like I got a flat tire, and then I spilled coffee on myself, and then,
like the attitude journal instead of the gratitude journal. Boom. Mic drop. Thank you.
My work is done here.
Yes.
Oh,
I'll be here all week. So, but anything like that to just help you notice, and help you notice that you're noticing. And then you're going to be back like, oh, like, licks finger, flips pages. Oh, I got a lot of stuff I can work with here. Not sure what I'm going to do with it, but maybe I could go to Gold Comedy and take their stand-up boot camp class.
Right.
Advertorial, and figure out in a nice, safe, friendly space, what's my style? What would be, everyone writes about the same topics. So, everyone, that's fine. But like, what's my unique persona, my unique angle, my emotional flavor? Am I angry? Am I just worn out? What's my persona that's natural for me? You don't have to like be peppy if your persona is not,
right. Yeah.
Just really just working with what you have, whether it's your personality or your material or all of that, is like, trust me, you've got stuff. Trust me.
So what's your thought on, I don't know, like what's your perspective on comedy these days? I mean, there's so much content on, like you said, on Netflix. There's so many stand-up shows. There
so many great comedies too. So many great female forward comedies. It's including like, Girls 5 Eve Up, which is, God forbid, like hacks about older women and like specifically about ageism. Never thought I'd live to see the day. And I mean, Golden Girls, sure, but like this is different. This is it's classic, obviously. Yeah, we live in a golden age. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. Like, I guess I do feel like I'm predominantly watching male comedians. I don't know why that is. I feel like a lot of the women that I see are still, I don't know, too crass or too like they're, I don't know if it's like a try too hard. I mean, they're getting on Netflix, so I guess they're doing the right thing for them, but
Well, just to push back on that though, do you know how many crass dudes there are? Like
oh
it's
yeah,
just, I mean,
and I
it's
don't
just like,
right. No, we're talking like ratios, yes,
yeah,
because
yeah,
I don't prefer to watch those guys.
yeah.
Like I'm
That's
a
okay
Nate
if that's not your
Bargatze kind
style.
of girl. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I like the fact that, the first time I saw him, he was like, damn is a swear in my house growing up. And, one time my dad said it and like the roof caught fire. Like
Yeah,
he's a clean guy. And not that I'm such a prude that I can't handle naughty comedy, but it's just not my go-to.
yeah.
But
That's fine.
but I feel like a
Every
lot of the female stuff out there is the stand-up stuff. But I don't know, I guess
keep at it.
what's
There's so many. I mean, I could bore you with and it's okay. Like not there's a lid for every pot, but not every comic is for every person. Like absolutely
mm,
not. Whether no matter what the gender, no matter what the it's just true. There's too many comics, and you're. Not too many comics. I mean,
I
more
gotcha.
comics
There's
than you can
enough.
love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, more comics than you can love them all. But Maria Bamford, Cameron Esposito, Naomi Ekperigin, Patty Harrison. Like there's so many.
Okay.
I mean, there's so many people who are just so original
Yeah.
and dudes too that are just so
Yeah.
original and just like I've just never seen anyone do comedy like that before. And it's such a Bob the drag queen, amazing, like just is amazing at stand up. Speaking of comedy about trauma, I just went to the best show that now you can see me in the front row.
Oh, wow.
He did a special. Bob the drag queen did a special that he shot in a club near my house, tiny little club, with Christy Summers and Sydney Washington, and the topic was it was called the Dead Moms Club, and the
Oh,
topic
fun.
was losing their moms, and like the tagline was it'll be funny, we promise.
Ah.
And again, it was a master class
Yeah.
in comedy about trauma, because they weren't, what can I say, they were making fun of like everything about the experience
Yeah.
of losing,
Yeah.
and even like gently making fun of their moms, but it
Yeah.
was so illuminating and original and fresh. And I didn't we all I had my experience with
Oh,
my
I mean,
mom
I'm
was
sure,
completely different
I
from
was
their
going to say,
experiences,
and I'm
but
sure
still.
someone good could make a joke out of the fact that, like, as my mother lay dying in a hospital bed, the social worker of the hospital pulled me out of the room as I'm about to spend my last moments with her, pulled me out of the room to bring me down the hall to like ask how I was doing. Well,
Girl, yeah,
come on
plenty of
now.
things, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right. Can I go
so
back
that's
into the room
funny,
so I can catch the last breath, please?
right? See, that's
Yeah,
funny. It's
yeah,
not like a joke yet, but it's funny. You would write that
right.
down in your attitude journal.
Pardon the interruption, but I have to tell you about my absolute favorite place on planet Earth. It's called Canyon Ranch. Have you ever heard of it? It is a wellness resort, and there are several locations in the United States. I have been to the one in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, and I'm telling you about it so that you can enjoy 10% off this spectacular place. Everything from the food, the staff, the facilities, the workshops, the exercise classes, the overall vibe, it's first class. So I hope you will check it out. You can book online or over the phone using code SIDELINE to save 10%. And now let's get back to the show.
But anyway, I just think, thank goodness that the zone is more flooded than it used to be. So there are so many different people that you can, there's also even just like a ton of podcasts that are just comedy content. And there's so much that there's going to be something on the menu that you love. And not everyone's style is going to be your cup of tea, but like, that's good. I mean, it's good. I mean, that's fine. And I do think it's still very hard for everyone to break in. It's just like the stories you hear about, like, they discovered me on Twitter and I was the head writer the next day, are based in truth, but not actually true. They're based in truth. Like Gold has shows now. We have we have one show that, and more in the works, that's now streaming on Fox Soul, which is one of Fox's comedy streamers. And we didn't have to go through the clunky old system,
Right,
because
right.
we're benefiting. We're not happy that Hollywood is kind of struggling to figure itself out, especially post-strike per se.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a lot of democratization that's going on that we embrace. And
Yeah.
so, and a lot of testing of new models like fast channels, which are these streamers that are ad revenue based. We still had to be selected, but we worked with a partner who's also sprung up to be part of this democratization process to make it easier for fast channels and even the big streamers and networks to find content. And so by partnering with them, we kind of circumvented the whole like pitch in a scary Hollywood office, which we also train you to do. We also can do that, but pitch in a Hollywood office and then wait a year and a half for the pilot to be funded, and then something happens at the, with the top brass that's out of your control, and then your pilot's delayed for another 2. Like we can circumvent that. So I think taking advantage, all to say, there's so much. I mean, there's so much content. It's crazy, and a lot of it is really good. And it's easier now than it was. It's still hard work, but there are fewer steps in some cases to getting your stuff made, seen, and distributed.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about comedy as a creative outlet. Tell me, talk about that and apply it to a kind of an ordinary person.
Well, there are at least, when I last counted, there were at least 2,000 studies that this is not only about comedy as a creative outlet, but that kind of capture the idea of comedy skills as life skills. And they all prove one aspect of, that includes the following, that comedy helps you forge, and I don't mean comedy necessarily professional comedy, but jokes, making a joke, forges connection, builds confidence, helps you think faster, write sharper, read a room, listen better, all of those things. And it's not even, and like to go back to your kind of made up, although realistic person who's like, but I'm not funny. It doesn't mean, one example I like to give is that doesn't mean that you have to like walk around the world dropping fully formed jokes in order to kind of access the power of comedy. It's, if you take the example of reading a room and then being able to say what's so, you're the funny one. So like you're in a meeting, right? And everyone's like ignoring the fact that everyone's uncomfortable because it's freezing, or everyone's uncomfortable because the breakfast was, let's face it, terrible, or whatever it was. If you're the one to say, is it me or is it Antarctica in here? Like,
right. Yeah.
Then, it doesn't have to be that funny, but to read the room kind of releases and say what everyone else is thinking, relieves the pressure, like lets you start your meeting. It just lets you start your meeting. And it's not like you're then connected as best friends, but you're connected as people who are just on the same page at that moment with their experience being said out loud. So it's not that you have to be like the funniest person in the room. It's just being the one who said the thing that everyone was thinking, So even those tiny moments, or even if the breakfast is great, like, I'm sorry, I just have to say,
can I move in here because the food's better here than my own house? Yeah.
Right. Like, who made these muffins? Whatever it is, even just moments like that, bring these moments of interrelatedness. And there's all these stats about how like managers prefer to hire people with a sense of humor, which sort of intuitively sounds right. But these are the reasons why. They can maybe, if everyone's upset about something, they can like take the pressure down with one wisecrack that, again, doesn't have to be the joke of the century, but just something that accurately reflects what is so at that moment. And so I think the confidence has to come not just from like, this is going back to what we were saying earlier, the confidence to do that doesn't come from, will I make them laugh and will this be the funniest joke in the world? The confidence comes from just being the one to say it, like to say the thing. But how much will people respect you if you're the one to say the thing that everyone's thinking but was afraid to say, even if it's tiny?
Yeah.
And it does not have to be hilarious. It can be a gentle wisecrack, That doesn't say much about it being a creative outlet, but which is what you asked. But this is, these are the ways in which, the littlest moments of comedy can really have an effect on your day.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, it's also a creative outlet in the ways that we discussed, just, I don't know, being silly, like, decorating a cake poorly, like being like, I can't decorate a cake. I'm terrible at this. So I'm going to, I'll just make a big circle, like.
Yeah. Hashtag nailed it. Yep.
Right. Nailed it. And then just like hand someone the cake with a really nice card and be like, I can't decorate cakes, but my feelings for you are like this cake is like, whatever. So just stuff like that is not comedy on a marquee, but it's just funny ways to just tell the truth
Yeah. So what would you say? How is your life better because of
Mm.
comedy? Or, what are the perks of having comedy in your life?
Um, I definitely made the right choice to marry a funny husband. And so and also, but even before that, I had the good taste to choose friends who were funny. Like I
Hmm.
can't think of one of my friends who was not funny, like the dear friends, of course.
Yeah.
And the level, this is just like an end in itself, like the level of delight that we have experienced in our various groups, whether it's my college friends or, the different
Yeah.
subgroups, simply the level of delight that we take in just cracking each other up. Like the text groups are ridiculous. Like the text groups are hilarious. And where the humor comes is from what you, I think, is, fancily called a background of relatedness. It's from our shared experiences,
Right. Right.
and the jokes that we've had running
Yeah.
since the
Yeah.
80s,
Yeah.
like we have one group that has a running joke about a trout sandwich. Don't even ask me where it came from, but like they're constantly, someone will be like in Cleveland and they take a picture of a menu and be like, you guys, it's a trout sandwich. I don't even
Right.
know where,
Right.
and so
Why are we
it's
still
just,
laughing about that? Yeah.
I don't even know where it came from. And but it's sort of the delight of as an end in itself
Yeah.
is absolutely a thing. And then it also makes us able to joke about, I mean, we talk about and then we sort of, nerd out about humor and comedy all the time in the house, whether it's like, when can you make jokes about the Holocaust?
Right.
And we've also dedicated a lot of time to sort of mostly showing, not telling, but training our kids to be funny, just because again, I could list you 10 reasons, and we already have, about like the impact it can have in the world. But what if it was just delight?
Yeah.
What if it was
Yeah.
just the satisfaction of getting a laugh? I remember when when our kids were little, they're 16 and 18 now, but they used to share a bunk bed, or had a bunk bed, and
Mhm.
the lights were off. And one of them was like, let's say they were like 3 and 5, or 4 and 6, something. And the littler one, Sam, was telling a joke, and it was pitch black. So all you heard was the voices. And Sam was like about to land the joke. And B, the older one, you heard this voice from the upper bunk totally just swoop in and finish the joke.
Feel the punchline. Yep.
Yep. And we heard this little voice in the dark, which was Sam, saying, B, you totally stepped on my punchline. And we were like, and tonight we win the parenting medal,
Yes, we did
so
it. We've got comedians in the house.
yeah, but just being able to, and I'm not sure, I'm kind of avoiding saying that it's good to raise kids that way or good to have that in your life, because then you can see like the lighter side of things. I'm not always sure it's the lighter side, but just because things are terrible.
It's almost
But
like
just
the stripped down, like, let's just laugh at the fact that, you got kicked out of school or something. Like, we
something
can,
like what could be funny, like what, it's just like a turning down the pressure valve,
yeah, yeah.
like this is a gross one, but like I still laugh about this. Like literally, and this was not long ago. The night my dad died, I was there. It was ghoulish, And I mean, it was not. Let me just help your. This is what you do when you do comedy about uncomfortable things. You have to put your audience at ease. So I will now put the audience at ease by saying he was not suffering. It was fine,
Yeah.
but it was still terrible. And like the funeral home came to get him, and one of the people, they're so nice, and they realize that you're like at your worst moment, whatever. But
Sure.
like one of the guys looked like he had just walked out of an Anne Rice novel. Like he had like long
Oh.
hair and a vest, and he was like very Victorian, and he was very unctuous. And he like got down on his knees and took my hands and said, I just want you to know I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm bawling anyway. And
Right.
he just had this look about him. And I was like, okay. And they went and did their thing. Because he's trained professionally. He was good at his job. It's fine, no shade. But then he walked away, and I said to my husband, I'm literally heaving. Like I'm crying so hard, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
heaving. But I managed to say, I think he's a vampire.
Right.
Because it was all I could think about
Yes,
in that
yeah.
moment.
I've
And
got the picture. Yeah.
it's also like it's practice. Like my husband and I we've trained our brains to always be like, what's the joke, and sometimes we have to suppress it, like it's not time for a joke right now. But
Right.
like so it does come with practice, but also knowing your crowd. Like I knew that
Yeah.
I knew that wasn't inappropriate, because
Right.
first of all,
You
I can
get
say
it.
anything, but so it does come with practice,
Right. It
for
might not
sure.
have worked as
But
well in the eulogy, but it was, good between the two of you.
yeah, in the moment, it was the right
Yeah.
moment with the right. But so, even as I'm making suggestions to you and your listeners for the kind of like getting started, and that joke might occur to you in the same awful moment, and you might choose not to make it because you don't know if it's okay, and that's fine too. It's just that after years of practice, I knew it was fine, and I wasn't even like trying to make a joke, like to lighten the mood.
No, it was like you said before, it was the observation.
It was just, it just came. There was nothing. I mean, it had to be said. Anyway, I still don't know if he's not a vampire. P.S.
Fair.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't ask for his ID. I didn't tell him to look in the mirror. I don't know.
That's good. Like, so, there's something about the unknown, the mystery there. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, but this is all accessible to everyone. Whatever you're like, any version of this is positively accessible to everyone, no matter what your kind of self-opinion is in terms of being funny or doing comedy. It is accessible to everyone. And honestly, at worst, let's think about what it means to have a sense of humor. It just means you have a sense. It doesn't mean you have a grasp. It's just sense of humor. The word is sense of humor. So even if you could just be a good audience, and just be open to laughing, that's half the, like my mom was very funny, but she wasn't like a card, she was very witty. So she'd always be the ones to write like the funny limericks at the thank you dinners, about the people. She always wrote good, that kind of thing. But she wasn't like a ham.
Right, sure.
But she was a great crowd. It was so easy to make her laugh because she had a great sense of humor. She knew when humor was in the room and she responded appropriately. So that's like that's a great start.
I felt so bad one time. I was with a group and we were seeing I don't know how this in and of itself, maybe like I could set the stage. And it's funny. We were at a Chinese food restaurant. This was as an adult. This was like I'm, approaching 40 at the time. And in a Chinese food restaurant in New Hampshire, in the basement, and there was a college comedy troupe performing. Yep. Okay, so they do their thing, and I found them to be very funny, or one of the guys in particular. And so afterwards, we did our little like meet and greet with these 20-year-olds. It was very cute, like, getting autographs and stuff. And I was like, I didn't mean for it to sound like this, but I was like, I was the one that was laughing. I meant I was the one that was laughing like uproariously.
Right, right.
Making a scene. And it came out as I was the one that was laughing. And I was like, sorry, probably guys. Not what the comedian wanted to hear after his show, but.
Right. What I meant was, I was the silly laugh. The loud laugh.
That like was snorting. Yeah. But it was, But I probably was like mainly the one that was laughing because my husband was like, this was exactly how it sounds. The Jewish comedy group from Brandeis that's performing in a Chinese food basement. Yeah.
I know exactly the scene.
Yeah. And so they
many of them have probably gone on to successful careers in comedy.
I sure hope so.
Some have not.
Yeah, I hope so, but odds are not in their favor. Maybe that one guy. So that was that. I do love a good comedy show, and highly recommend it. It is very like soul nourishing. Yeah. Nothing like a good laugh.
And it's also because when you laugh, especially in a group, like this is the shout out for comedy shows. It's because if you found a comic that you are like of whom you are the audience,
yes.
Then every joke, strictly speaking, not universally, but strictly speaking, it has a setup and a punch, even if whether they're articulated or implicit. And where you travel between the setup and the punch is that you have to be able to follow the comedian through a misdirection, right? That's the setup is you think they're going in this direction, and the punch is detour, right?
Sure.
So if you are able to follow the comic through that misdirection, and all the other people in the room are too, that means you have a connection. Like you're the ones who got that joke. Not everyone will be able, not because they're like smart or stupid or whatever. It's just like it's the content, right? So if you're able to kind of follow the comic down that twisting road, that means that by definition that everyone in the room has something in common. And so it's a laugh of recognition. and sort of satisfaction that you followed the comic, but then in the context of a show, you all did. And there's something very, as you were saying, soul nourishing about that.
That's awesome. All right, Lynn, tell everybody where to find you, get more of you, learn from you.
Sure, thank you. So our website is goldcomedy.com. There are lots of free online resources just to kind of read about all aspects of comedy and read. We have lots of profiles of people, mostly women, but not all, who work in comedy, whether on stage or behind the camera, whatever you can learn from. It's a great place for a warm up if you're curious about joining, to be part of our unlimited. When you join our club, you join year by year. So once you're in the club, you have unlimited access to the classes that we have in regular rotation. Some people take our classes 5-6 times just for the accountability and structure. We have, weekly conversations with celebrities and pros. We have the world's most friendly open mic every Monday. And this is all online, so wherever you are. And then we have opportunities to level up even more by being on our sketch teams, which gets being distributed by, it's easy to create your own path depending on your goals. And we do have that our pitching class, our high level fancy pitching class starting up soon, which really is the one that's the kind of the Gen X women happy place that I was talking about, where people really go with ideas that they're serious about working to get made and bringing their expertise and experience from all the rest of their lives and putting them into the pitches that they're developing. And they go on to get representation, get their shows into development, like it works. So that's all, all that info is gettable too from our website. And if you DM me on Instagram at Gold Comedy or my personal Instagram, Lynn Harris, DM me and I'll send you a 10% off code for listeners. Nice. For joining our club.
That's awesome. I mean, and the thing with Gen X women is you talk about material. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It actually is astounding that a 20-year-old dude could have material
I know.
without living the life that we have.
Yeah. And I will say for those Gen Xers out there that we do, one of our sketches famously does include a cameo from Janine Garofalo, who is one of our Gen X goddesses. So
wow.
Yeah, she's very funny. She's very game. And we also have Rachel Dratch as an advisor, and she
who is a fellow Bostonian.
We grew up in the same town.
I know.
We were both just back there for the 250th anniversary, which was very moving. And if you love Revolutionary War reenactments, this is your happy place. I mean, I do.
Well, I'm just more of a fan of the Smart Pack commercial. I mean, that
commercial is so funny. And let me give you a little statistic.
That was the best.
There is a stat out there, and this is one of the things we're trying to change. A slightly old stat, but I think it's still grounded in reality. Not that old. That men are twice as likely to be the funny one in commercials. Like if you think of like standard mainstream commercials, it's usually like the man screwing up the laundry and the woman going, oh, gross, whatever it is. So that's an example of there's many more, but that's an example of just complete hilarity that we need more of in ads too.
That was so good. Women,
the Smart Pack. Yeah.
I really think that's up there as like one of the best commercials ever.
Right. And it's so well written. It's like, God, even Revere, they even pick the names of the towns.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, those guys. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those in Team Chris Evans can do no wrong. So well done.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. Totally.
All right. Well, as we wrap it up famously on this show, I would like to invite you to raise a glass so that we can say smoothie will do, or kombucha, whatever you've got.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of cranberry stuff going on. Yeah.
Let's say cheers to anyone can be funny in some way.
Yep. Yeah. Cheers to that. Absolutely.
Lynn, I thank you for coming on and just leveling comedy out for us and making us feel like we all have an audience somewhere.
We all have an audience somewhere. And you just met the 2-drink minimum. So this has been great.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. I am so grateful to you and I wish you continued success.
Thank you. Same to you. Thanks for having me.
Wasn't that great? I mean, yes. she talked about being a comedian and making a professional career out of comedy, but really we talked about just fundamentally appreciating humor, being funny, and understanding how comedy connects to the world at large, right? Now, let me get into Lynn's notes from the sidelines. Number one, it's not about making people laugh, it's about saying things you think are funny. Number two, wouldn't it be great to recognize comics as funny regardless of gender? As in, not a funny female comic, but just a funny comic. Number three, comedy is a potent social force. So it's not just about the content, it's about the faces and voices, because when you're doing comedy, you have authority. Number four, when you make people laugh, you make people listen. Ooh. And truthfully, that could be on stage, in the boardroom, or at lunch with your friends. Number five, there are ways to combine comedy and trauma if you can hold it far enough away from you that you can look at it from all sides and have a bit of distance from the intensity of the pain. Number six, the more specific you are about your own story, the more relatable it is. And this applies to comedy and just life in general. Number seven, I just thought this was hilarious. It takes 10 years to be an overnight success. So stop comparing yourself to everyone else and just enjoy the process. Again, whatever it is. Number eight, if you can read a room and say what everyone else is thinking, it relieves the pressure and connects people. Number nine, what if being funny was just for the delight and satisfaction of getting a laugh? And number 10, comedy shows, I'm talking live, in-person performances, allow the audience to bond. Because if they all get the same joke, it means that they share something. And if you've ever attended a live comedy show, you know what Lynn is talking about. You know that when you're laughing at that joke about the washing machine breaking and you see other people laughing at the same joke, it's like you're in a secret society. It bridges gaps between people. And frankly, we need as much of that as possible in this world. So thank you, Lynn, for sharing your personal story with comedy, the work that you're doing at Gold Comedy, and just being a light presence. And listeners, once again, I want to remind you about my offer of free breathwork. Just look at the show notes and click the links. You can try this incredible modality today. I will tell you from experience, there is something so therapeutic and healing using our breath and not just talky like we typically do when we've got stuff bubbling inside of us. There is definitely a time and place for talk therapy and bitch fests, but when we're talking about moving the stuckness, really processing emotions, trauma, stress, breathwork is where it's at. So I hope you will take advantage of the links in the show notes. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Maybe someone you already think is funny, or someone you think could use a little comedy in their life. I will see you right back here next week for my fascinating conversation with another beautiful, relatable soul. Her name is Trinette Faint. She's doing really cool things in the world, writing, acting, hosting retreats, and so much more. So until then, I wish you an amazing week, and cheers to you.